Tonight on What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update, Target Ambition, and Lifestyle Quest segments, we're talking about how to accomplish your New Year's goals by using a project management approach. Every year around January 1st, millions of people start personal development plans or set goals. By the end of the month, most of these self-improvement plans have been discarded. And by the end of the year, they're remembered again, and you promise to really do it this time. Rinse and repeat for a few years, until you just accept that you're probably never going to make it happen. But what if you could? Using a project management approach and a few other things can help you accomplish all of the things that you wish you could. Stick around for the whole show to find out how. Hey guys, I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you get value from them or know someone who would, please support us by hitting like, subscribe, leaving comments, and sharing. What the Heck Do I Know presents PM Update with Leah and Mia. And now your host, Leah. Welcome back to PM Update. I'm Leah. How many of you have written New Year's resolutions and failed to do them? I'm guessing every last one of you, and I know I'm guilty of this myself. So why is it that we do this year after year and keep failing? And how should we do it to increase our chance of success? This seems like the perfect topic to discuss with our regular guest, Rachel Roberts, who loves to help out with goal setting. Mia, what wisdom does Rachel have for us this week? Well, as you mentioned, Rachel is sharing with us her thoughts on goal setting, New Year's resolutions, and how to set yourself up for success. So she has some general advice that anyone can use, as well as what she did for a couple of her clients this season. So we will be seeing some specific situations. That's great, Mia. I won't be planning my resolutions until after I see these stories then. I love getting advice I can actually use from Rachel. But first, it's time now for our first quote question in the show. Do you know who said, "The new year stands before us like a chapter in a book waiting to be written"? We can help write that story by setting goals. The answer and Mia's stories up next. Just in time to be helpful for New Year's, Rachel Roberts is back with us to remind us about successful goal setting. After almost a year of most of the world being in survival mode, Rachel is here with us to talk about how to keep moving forward, but also being realistic about the expectations we should set for ourselves. Welcome back to the show, Rachel. Now that we're finishing up a pretty bleak year, what kind of life coach wisdom do you have for us for the new year?
Thanks so much for inviting me back. I'm always glad to be here. This has been such a tough year for everyone. My first piece of advice is to be kind to yourself. The end of the old year and beginning of the new is usually a time for people to reflect on what they want to do or feel guilty about what they didn't get done. So my first suggestion is to throw out all those negative thoughts out the window and just concentrate on doing things that will be good for you. And then set yourself up for success by planning them out in a way that will help you stick to them.
Let's start with some basics then. What are the most common New Year's resolutions? Can you give us some examples?
Year after year, the top resolutions generally fall into three categories and are about being healthier, getting a handle on personal finances, and something related to personal development. Improving diet, exercising more, losing weight, quitting smoking or drinking are the kind of resolutions that go into the being healthier category. Saving more, spending less, getting a better job, paying off debt, these resolutions fall into the personal finance category. Learning a new skill, getting a hobby, reading more, spending more time with family and friends, these fall into the personal development group.
None of those sound very difficult, and I admit I've had some of those resolutions myself. So why do so many of us have a hard time reaching these? What do you see as the biggest mistakes when it comes to setting New Year's resolutions?
With my clients, I see 5 key things. The biggest mistake is a resolution that is something you think you should do rather than something you really want to do. If you aren't committed to it, no matter how you set it up, you aren't likely to follow through. The second biggest mistake is that most people don't take a project management approach to setting and achieving their goals. The third is related to the second in that they don't do SMART goals. They aren't necessarily specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, or time-bound. The fourth is when people write out their resolutions, there is a long list of them. They tend to try to do too much at once at the same time. The fifth is not giving themselves a break once in a while or allowing for missteps in the plan. You won't be perfect all the time, so you should acknowledge that in your plan so you don't think you failed when something doesn't go as planned.
So what kinds of things should we be doing differently? I know I want to reach my goals this year.
The first thing is to make sure that the resolution or goal is something you really want to do. No matter what your goals are, ask yourself why you are writing this down and why you think you want to do it. Is it something that other people or society is telling you that you should do? Or is it something that is really important to you? If your goal is to get a new hobby, but you aren't sure what you want to start, you will probably think about it for a while and then forget about it. But if your new hobby is something you're already thinking about and excited about starting, or has a purpose at the end, you're more likely to commit to doing it. Maybe you were always fascinated by model rockets as a kid, and now that your daughter has expressed an interest, you want to try this out. And maybe the end goal is to light off a rocket together on her birthday.
So what is the next step after narrowing down our resolution list to only things we're actually committed to doing?
I can't stress enough how important it is to take a project management approach to setting goals, especially the initiation and planning stage. The initiation is the idea. You take that idea and confirm you really want to do it. Now you need a plan. Do some research and get a realistic idea of how long it will take, how much it will cost, and how much effort is required. All of it. Then build a plan about what you think will work for you. No one knows better than you, so be realistic about what you're able to accomplish in a specific amount of time, and about where you're starting. If your goal is to be a concert pianist and you've never had a lesson, you're going to need a lot more time to reach this goal than someone who's been studying piano for 10 years.
That makes sense. So the planning part of the project management approach helps you create the SMART goals then, right?
Exactly. Once you do the research, you can build a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. An example for paying off a debt might be, I will save an extra $28 per week to put towards paying off a small loan in 6 months by making coffee at home. If you did your research, you would know that you're spending $6 per day, 5 days per week, buying coffee at a shop. But it only costs 25 cents to make the same coffee at home. This results in $28.75 savings per week. Between your regular monthly payment and the additional amount, you should be able to meet this goal, especially if you follow through with execution and monitoring and control to check your progress.
It sounds like setting up a SMART goal takes some effort on its own.
It does, but the effort it takes helps you confirm if this is something you really want and is realistic for you. In fact, let's take a minute to talk about realistic goals. Since this is 2020, be extra kind to yourself and realistic about what is possible for you. If you've been struggling to put pants on every day, then setting a goal to do anything ambitious is probably going to result in failure. Don't do this to yourself. Make your goals simple and work towards bigger things when you prove to yourself that you can do the little things. If your starting goal needs to be, I will put on clean pants and shirt at least 5 days per week by getting up at least a half hour before I need to start work and doing laundry 1 day a week, then that's good enough. Once you establish that routine, maybe you can move up to bigger things. Just make sure that you're doing it because you want to, not because you think you should.
You mentioned in your list of mistakes that people usually put too many goals on their resolution list. So how many is too many?
Well, this is a question that doesn't have a single correct answer. In the past, I have recommended that my clients have 3 goals working at a time. 1 short-term, 1 medium-term, and 1 long-term goal. But this doesn't work for everyone. Some people want more and can do it successfully. Some people need less. Some are better at working on a couple of short and medium-term goals that will eventually turn out to be long-term. But thinking 5 years into the future is too distracting for them. If you're having trouble with life in general, though, which is so many people these days, I would most likely recommend doing just one goal at a time. Picking something short-term and achievable is more likely to boost confidence to work on more things later if you want.
So if your clients are setting SMART goals, then there's a specific schedule or timeline involved. So how do you give yourself a break like you suggest in your fifth mistake?
There are a couple of different ways you can do this. You can actually build a break into your schedule if it's a medium or long-term goal. If you're tracking your progress weekly as part of monitoring and control, then maybe every fifth week you can schedule no progress. Or if you know that doing everything perfectly should take 4 months, give yourself 5 months to do it. If you think that might be a problem for you, then build the schedule for a perfect world, but realize in the beginning that it probably won't work out that way. And when you do have an off week, don't give up, just reassess what you need to do in the time left, and make up the progress later or redo your schedule. The important part is to keep doing something towards your goal, even if it isn't the level of progress you had planned for yourself.
That makes sense to me. Thanks so much for being with us today and for sharing your clients' stories with us for the second half of our show.
Thanks so much for inviting me to the show and for giving me the opportunity to share my client stories.
My interview with Rachel gave us a lot to consider when coming up with New Year's resolutions and goals. If you're planning on putting together a list this New Year's, please remember to focus on what you really want to do, plan it out, be realistic with yourself, and keep your list short. And always be kind to yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just need to make progress. What a great way to summarize Rachel's advice, Mia. Thank you. Now here at PM Update, we do a lot of shows about goals and project management because we want to provide the tools and techniques for doing whatever it is that you want to do. And not just with your New Year's resolutions, but all year round. Personal growth doesn't just happen with the new year. It happens every time you have a realization that you want something in your life to be different. And it is something that you can control. Right now, there are a lot of things that you might want to change about your life, but you don't feel like you have control over them. That might be true and it might not. What's important though is for you to identify what you think you can control and work on that. And when you're doing your research, only put in your plan what you know will work for you. Now, for the answer to our first quote question, do you know who said, "The new year stands before us like a chapter in a book, waiting to be written"? We can help write that story by setting goals. That was self-help book author Melody Beattie. Now, for our second quote question, do you know who said, "Character is the ability to carry out a good resolution long after the excitement of the moment has passed"? Stick around to find out the answer to this question and hear some of Rachel's client stories coming up next. Now it's time to take all the abstract advice from Rachel in the first part of our show and see how a couple of her clients put it into action.
Sam is a previous client who contacted me in May for some help. He was laid off from his medical scheduling job when hospitals and clinics were concentrating on COVID and limiting all other services. Since we kept in touch, even though he was having trouble getting out of bed some days, he reached out for some help. After talking with Sam, I realized he was really worried about how he was going to pay rent, especially since it was so hard for him to do even basic things. He had at least managed to sign up for unemployment benefits right afterwards, but he was only doing the bare minimum in terms of job searching to collect those benefits, and eventually they would run out. We talked through what he needed and what his options were, and he was able to set up a plan. Since Sam was having trouble leaving his room some days, his first goal was to apply for at least one additional job per day that was not in his previous career field. Not many places were hiring new personnel, so he concentrated on things that were classified as essential businesses. He moved a table and his computer into his room, so if he didn't want to leave, he didn't have to. Eventually, he received a conditional offer for a pharmacy technician trainee position at a location not far from his apartment. Because he had to register with the board and pass a background check, the hiring process took a while, so he kept applying for jobs while he waited. He also concentrated on getting back into a somewhat normal sleeping schedule and getting dressed every day. Once he started feeling up to it, he even started exercising in the mornings. By the time his paperwork and hiring process were complete, he was feeling almost like a normal person again and was able to do these things without setting goals. He was also happily surprised that the pay for his new job was about the same as his last. He had 2 years to complete some training and apply for the full certification, but was confident that he would be able to pass with on-the-job training he was getting from the pharmacists and other technicians that he worked with. Everyone was busy, but friendly and really helpful. Now that the new year is approaching, Sam is once again going to a project management approach to complete his full certification requirements and study for his exam. Sarah was in a completely different category than Sam. She was used to an active social life and had managed to stay working at home throughout the shutdowns. The isolation wasn't making her depressed, it was making her anxious. She scheduled a review with me in early December to talk about how to fill up her time in a way that was productive and fulfilling. Since she was already healthy and had her finances in order, she was looking for something else to do in the new year that would bring value to her life. During our initial phone conversation, I asked Sarah to think about all of the things she was interested in and what kind of value she was looking for. She talked about wanting to be around people and feeling like she wanted to help others, but wasn't sure how. She also mentioned wanting to get back into photography since she was pretty good at it as a teenager. Sarah dusted off her camera and photography knowledge and started getting out of the house to shoot backwoods nature and animals, and also started a couple of business pages on social media. She set some goals for gaining followers with the intent of eventually turning it into a side hustle. She also checked around with local charities to look for volunteering opportunities and committed to spending at least 10 hours per week helping out at food bank and soup kitchens.
No matter what your functioning level is, it is possible to improve your situation by using a systematic approach like project management. When you plan out what you need to do, what and how long it will take before you start, it will help you get it done. Meeting small goals will give you the confidence to start slightly larger ones. And if you keep going, you can get back to your normal self, or even your better self. I couldn't have said it better myself, Mia. Thanks to you and Rachel for sharing those stories. It really is better to have a plan when you're starting new projects, even when the new project is you. Now, to answer our second quote question for the day, do you know who said, "Character is the ability to carry out a good resolution long after the excitement of the moment has passed"? That was National Speakers Association founder, Cavett Robert. That's all for What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update with Leah and Mia and our Target Ambition and Lifestyle Quest segments for this week. Thank you for watching and see you next time on our next episode of PM Update. Good night. Hey there, before you go, don't forget to support these videos by hitting like and subscribe. I love seeing comments too.